Hi, my name is Alexis, and I'm here with.
Hi, I'm Katy Ballard, and I'm getting to do an interview with Alexis for TK1, and I'm very excited.
Glad to have you here.
Thank you.
What roles did you play in Taos Pride, and what advocated you to advocate for other people in the LGBTQIA?
Thank you for asking. Well, actually, I have been vice president, and then vice president again, and now I'm secretary. When I moved here with my ex-wife in 2015, I didn't really know anybody, but I had done a lot of activism in Lubbock at Texas Tech University. And so she actually found the Taos Pride here in our local community, and I connected with the president. And for me, personally, it was a way to find other queer people in the community and to get to know Taos, because I know it can be a difficult place to get to connect with people. And so that was one thing. It was just a little more selfish. But it's just knowing the struggle that queer individuals everywhere experience. And I know I talk a lot about how Taos is really accepting, but a lot of the time that I've learned it's for transplants, people coming from other places, and that's not always true for everyone. So creating safe places where everyone of every age, we've had events at the roller disco where you had 5-year-olds dressed up as princesses, and where I got to know and work with the young drag queens just starting out. And just knowing how important it is to create those safe, queer spaces anywhere. Because we can think we're okay and safe, and that's not always true. So, anyway, thanks.
That was so good. Can you share some challenges you have experienced as a lesbian woman?
Well, I have to say, if I'm being honest, here in Taos, it hasn't been as much of a struggle as where I come from. I'm cisgendered. I own that. I'm white. I'm educated. So there's a lot of my identities that are privileged. But I was married. I have a 19-year-old that I raised openly as a lesbian, and they identify as queer and non-binary. But here, for me, it's been easier. Lubbock, Texas, where I'm from, very different story. Very conservative city. 70% Republican, 30% Democrat. If I went into places, I would not hold hands with my ex. I've gone with my current girlfriend, and there are certain places where I'm not going to show affection. But because of other identities and privileges I have not experienced the same discrimination and marginalization I think that other people have. But I definitely choose my pronouns when talking about my partner in certain areas in Lubbock or Texas. Sadly, I find that I kind of switch, that in certain things to stay safe, and I have a privilege of doing that because of how I look. And so knowing that, I almost feel like, I need to be that more supportive and to use, resources that I have to help others. So I hope that answers the question.
In your opinion, what are some key areas where our community could improve supporting the LGBTQ+?
Recently, so ways that Taos could support the LGBTQIA plus or queer communities. I've actually been asked that by a few people that are going to get their degree in therapy or education, and they've reached out to me to ask about transgender and other queer teen community centers, support centers. We don't have anything. We don't have really places that, if we're talking, specifically of like queer youth, like centers or places for people to go for support. I don't know about medical health and care that is provided here in Taos, specifically, say, for anybody transitioning. So that's the thing that I get asked about. Because Pride is great, we create safe spaces through, really in August and June in the summer, but that's not a sustainable way to like fully support people in the community. That needs to come in forms of legal aid, medical aid, therapy aid, having people that understand different parts of the community, I think would be really important. And I don't know exactly how that can look, whether it's a youth community center or counseling centers. And that's true for any age group that falls outside of the heteronormative, view of things. So I don't know. Those aren't a lot of specifics. There's just things that I think we need to think about in providing support for.
That was so good. Thanks. How do you envision a more inclusive and welcoming environment for the LGBTQIA community members in our town?
So creating a more inclusive and welcoming and diverse experience in Taos. A lot of that ties back to, I think, the answers in the last question, providing services specifically for LGBTQIA plus or queer individuals in the community. I think having more leadership that is either openly queer or that is an open ally, but isn't just playing to getting votes, like really trying to work with people that identify on the spectrum of what it means to be queer. Open allies, but having leadership of LGBTQIA people, I think would be wonderful. And then more events that are centered on creating safe spaces like Pride. I wish Pride could do more throughout the year, like do things that were really substantial to connecting the community, to bringing people together, to getting more resources involved. But Pride is an organization of all volunteers that all work full-time jobs. So it really takes the community coming together. So we have the seed for what could create a more inclusive and welcoming feel to Taos. We just have to get more people involved and more young people.
Yeah.
Because, we're sitting here in our 30 to 60, 70 year range trying to do events for everybody. But having more voices, I think. And that's true of the whole community, but we could start with this organization that already exists. So, anyway.
Are there specific initiatives or policies you believe in our community should implement to better support the LGBTQIA individuals?
Okay, so do I think there's specific initiatives or policies that should be passed to help LGBTQIA plus individuals in Taos? I don't know of specifics that need to be passed, meaning I don't know if there's any laws actually blocking anything. So it would have to be proactive laws and initiatives that were taken to fully support people. I don't think there's any in place that need to be countered. And so far right now in New Mexico, there are no bans on transgender lives. There are no bans on drag queens performing with children. And so that's true in Taos. And I don't see any active laws being made against queer individuals in Taos. As far as active initiatives being passed, I think, again, it goes back to finding ways to provide resources and education and places, for especially teenagers that have maybe lost funding or lost their family. When I was young growing up, my little brother and we had a lot of friends who identified as queer also. And when their family often kicked them out, they came and lived with us. And we saw that support system from very young with our own parents. But also that awareness of how often that happens. I was really lucky. My brother and I both identify as queer and have very supportive parents who are like, yeah, we kind of knew from early on and have been there for us. So I know I've talked around a lot of this, but yeah, there's at least no active bans against or policies against. But yeah, I would like to look more into what could actively be done.
Yeah.
At this time. So.
What role do you see education playing in fostering acceptance and understanding the LGBTQ plus identities in our community?
Okay. So education and acceptance, so important. So when I taught at Texas Tech University in person, I taught future teachers how to incorporate art into K through 6th grade. And I did that a lot. We talked about race, class, sexual orientation, and all these big topics within the subject of art. And art really allowed for a lot of discussion on these big topics. But the reason I bring it up is because I had a lot of students, and this is true in my women and gender studies classes, that come in with very closed-minded views of issues of race, issues of class, issues of sexual orientation, and sexual preference. But it's through education and meeting people and reading about, these lived experiences of LGBTQIA people that they start to go, oh, or like, what am I so afraid of? And I think that's a big part of it is there's fear about things they don't understand. And it's the same thing here. People that have hate and dislike and discrimination are usually really uneducated on things, and they're coming from a place of fear, something that they believe to be true. And by them coming to Pride events or meeting people or getting educated on the reality of situations, I think, knowledge is power, and that's such a cliche saying, but I think it's so true, is when we know and we've learned and we've met and we've educated, then we can have our minds opened and see things in a bigger, brighter way.
Have you encountered any successful examples of the LGBTQ plus inclusion or activism in another town? If so, what made them successful?
I've actually getting to see successful events that were LGBTQ centered. I've gotten to see that in a place called, I mentioned earlier, Lubbock, Texas, where I'm from and where I taught and where I went to graduate school. And the first Pride that I went to was there in 2008. And it was in this strange little shopping center, kind of hidden away. It wasn't well advertised. By the time I moved, it was a big event in the middle of the park. And my research was actually collecting oral histories of drag queens, like finding out where they came from, but it was in Lubbock. But the drag performers that I got to know would be at these big family-friendly Pride events in the middle of the park. And you had little kids all the way up to adults. There were protesters, but they were usually respectful, which I know is a weird way to describe them, but they kind of just stood on the sidelines. And for the most part, everybody was there and had a good time, and it was open and friendly. So I saw that change in Lubbock. Sadly, Texas has a lot of laws on the books that are getting in place that ban drag queens from performing anywhere children will be. So now these big open public park events where children are, you can't have drag shows anymore. So everything's going backwards. So I have seen how pride and education and knowledge can make a huge difference. But they can also, and this is a good point, if we don't keep fighting for those things, they can be taken away. We cannot take any of this for granted. Even here in Taos, where it's pretty liberal and open, any of that can be taken away. So got to see it bloom in Lubbock and then got to see it wither. So it's a reminder of why I do Pride. So thanks.
How can allies and community members actively contribute to making our town safer and more affirming for the LGBTQ members?
That goes back to education. We've got to have allies. I think that's important for most movements. The problem is allies do not need to overtake the group that they're trying to help. I've seen that happen. And they need to self-educate. They need to talk to people and find out what is happening in other places and not put the burden on us to have to further teach them how to be allies. We're there to work together. But yeah, finding out what they can do by talking to people one-on-one or going to Pride events or Texas Tech University offers allyship, courses. I wonder if UNM offers anything like that. So it's, because I'm an ally to other groups, and I don't want to step in and be like, I know everything. I'm the savior of your group. So yeah, again, finding that balance of education and support. Money's good, but money and knowledge and support, being there at events and providing resources and using one's privilege to help a group that doesn't have as much privilege, I think is really important. So, okay, thanks.
That was really good. What advice would you give to the LGBTQ plus youth who may be struggling to find acceptance in our community? What advice would you give to the parents or said youth that might not agree with them being LGBTQ+?
Advice to give to young queer people, especially teenagers, and their parents. It's hard being a teenager, if I remember correctly. It's been about 30 years. But being a teenager is hard for everybody. You're transitioning from a kid to an adult. There's a lot of things going on physically, mentally. I was talking to my kiddo Oliver, who's 19, and I was like, sometimes I think we're emotionally in the same place, like trying to figure it all out. But then you add on the fact that you identify in a way, and you are, not just identify, a person that is often marginalized or seen as less than. The one thing I just cannot wrap my head around is the anger that politicians have towards transgender people. A teenager who just wants to get medical help or mental help, being told by an outsider that you're not okay, and we're going to tell you what you can and cannot do with your own body. We're going to tell your parents what they can and cannot do. Where did that come from? Where is all that hate? And I don't know if it's to get votes or scapegoating somebody. But as far as advice, if you've got a teacher with a safe space sign on their door, if you've got somebody in your life that you can talk to, that's why these conversations are important about what can we offer in the Taos community, like, centers or counseling. It sounds so cliche, but it does get better. Because as you get older and you become your own person and you find others that feel the same way you do, you can find that support. And if you have family members that aren't supportive, try to build your own family. I know in the LGBTQIA plus world, it's often building your own family. For parents that don't accept, what's wrong? I mean, they're your kids. Just love them for who they are and just be supportive. And if you can't find the way to be supportive and provide the information and get yourself educated, find somebody else in the community or the family that can, and just do it with grace, So anyway,
that was good.
That.
Ready? Looking to the future, what are your hopes and aspirations for the LGBTQ community in our town?
So, future aspirations for LGBTQIA plus in Taos, and I would say broader, even northern New Mexico. This goes back to talking about how Lubbock grew in their Pride events, and it was beautiful, and we thought, yay, everything's good, we've got gay marriage, everybody's happy. And then we've just watched it in the last few years just get taken back. So again, it's liberal, it's accepting here in a lot of ways, not in every way. I mean, there's still parents that are going to have issues, and there's still grandparents, and there's still politicians. But so that reminder that things can change. They can become conservative and strict. Laws can be passed. So to get active, to find out what's happening politically, to organize, to connect to leadership that can do more, that can provide these supports. And just remember that things can always change and be taken away. I talk to students about, and I know we're not talking about women's reproductive rights or reproductive rights for whomever. We thought, okay, yay, it's legal, and then it was taken away. And so staying vigilant, keeping abreast of what's happening, I think is really important to stay on top of those things and to be active in what's happening. Because we all think, oh, I'm not a part of politics, I don't care about politics. Well, politicians don't care that we feel that way because those laws do impact us. I feel like I sound like such an adult telling teenagers to get involved in politics, but I've seen so firsthand how these laws are just changing because other people are making these decisions. We need to be making decisions about our own lives. So,
I agree.
yeah.
And that's a wrap.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Are we here?
I'm like,
Yes.
yes. Thank you so much for being here. It was a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you. I really, really enjoyed this, and you were wonderful.
Thank you.
And thank you. I really am passionate about talking about these topics, and to get to talk to you about them was really empowering, so I appreciate it.
Thank you.